All right, we are back. We have Manfred Keil with Claremont McKenna. You just saw Manfred's presentation. Thank you again, our second year in a row. Before I get too deep, what's your full title and position with Claremont McKenna College?
So I'm an associate professor of economics and the associate director of the Lowe Institute. So Robert Lowe finances that. And that's it.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, well, you just saw Manfred's presentation. He's actually, I'm not sure what order we're going to put you in on the actual slate of presentations, but for me, you are the last pre-recorded interview. So if I look a little tired, man, I got to tell you, it's a lot harder actually to do these events.
This is last but not least.
We've been
Yes?
taping for 5 days. Correct. Last but not least, but we've been doing these tapes for 5 days, and which is kind of odd because we might play these out of order. You say, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of presentation left. Well, for me, we're almost done. But at any rate, great job. Thank you for coming back again. So let's do the obvious. We are basically exactly within a week or so, a year away from our last market forecast, our 2020 market forecast, which was, I believe we were within 5 days of the actual official stay-at-home order from Governor Newsom that started, started across the country. I think that was on the Friday, and then we sat
That's right.
down.
It was on the 19th. I
Right.
remember this.
Okay, and then we came in the following Wednesday in
Yeah.
studio, and you did your thing. So you just kind of did it in your presentation, but this is a little more casual. So what did you think was going to happen? What did happen? Where were you right? Where were you wrong? What surprised you? And
I mean, what really surprised me was that in our society, as developed as we are, you walk into a grocery store and the toilet paper is gone.
right,
I mean, that to me was, it was. I was making a joke. I've got a slide where somebody put a toilet paper roll next to beer,
Right.
because they obviously decided to. And I said, we economists always talk about opportunity costs. I said, here's a new example.
Right.
Something I never thought about before.
Right.
It was that, but it was also the meat was gone.
yeah,
The pasta was gone.
Right.
Right. Potatoes were gone. So
Right.
it was stuff like that. I go into Trader Joe's and the frozen food, it's all gone.
Right.
Right. And
people were stocking up. There,
yes.
we had a little bit of a panic going on,
and
right?
what I learned was, I thought in our society that shouldn't happen. But one of the problems since the Great Recession is that we have learned to live with such low inventories.
Right.
Right. So you just wanted to have just in time, and as a result of that, we didn't stock up anymore.
Are you
like we
talking about
did
us as
before.
consumers, or are you talking about the
No.
actual the distribution?
Yeah, the
chain?
distribution.
Right.
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 And again, I mean, to me, this is one of the most advanced societies. What were you ever scared last year of the coronavirus? I tell you what, I was never scared until maybe sort of November, December, because it said if you had it and they would take you in an ambulance, you would have to wait at the hospital
Right.
for 6 hours before they would take you in.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, this is first world, right?
Right.
And that sort of scared me. I didn't expect that. Here's something else that I didn't expect, and I will say this in Chris Thornburg's favor. So Chris thought we would bounce back right away. I don't think that's true, but we didn't foresee how fast the economy recovered in the third quarter.
Right.
That was amazing, and it then flattened out, right? But I thought that was also, it says something about the U.S. economy, right? I mean, Chris will say, well, it was doing well before, and so what do you expect? Once you let people come back, it will do well again. I thought more of the lights that we had dimmed when we tried to bring them back in, I thought more of the light bulbs would be gone.
Right.
Right? Small businesses and so forth.
Well,
And it
but
has
in
happened.
some sectors, for sure.
And it has happened. But it was still amazing how fast much of the economy came back. Obviously not leisure and hospitality.
Right. Right, and that still seems like that's well, I don't know, maybe that it will be a super spring back with that. I mean, I think it was just yesterday or today. I don't know if it's California sports teams, but I think I'm not a Yankee fan, but I think Yankees are going to allow fans in the seats at
Yeah.
a 15% capacity or something like
The
that.
Dodgers will.
Yeah.
At a 20%, I think it is. So if you think about it, how many people fit into Dodgers? I think it's 57,000, something like that. Let's
Right.
make it 60.
Right.
So you'll have 12,000 in there. What will that look like? I don't know.
Yeah, but this is the crazy part, though. Okay, so we're basically casually, regardless of your November scare, and
Yeah.
I totally can relate to that. But here we are, casually talking about, with relatively no concern, you're only going to allow 15% of the people in to see a professional baseball team. A year ago, when we were on a 2-week, deal,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody thought everything was going to be fine in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but I don't know. I guess let's use your Coachella example.
Yeah.
Because you kind of gave the bifurcated forecast.
Yeah.
If Coachella happens in September, October,
Yeah.
then we're
Well,
going
good.
this way. If it doesn't, and it's not happening this April, but who knows, we're a year ago. But I remember you saying that, and I'm thinking, okay, wow, is there a chance that again, to use Coachella as the baseline, that's not going to happen at the postponed date?
Yeah.
And I think I might have told you this. I have my best friend basically he's retired now, but he was very closely involved with that promotion. And I called him within a day or so, and I asked him.
Maybe we can get some backstage passes.
Well, we might be. Well, let's get the concert on the books
Yeah,
here first.
okay.
But I called him and I asked him, and he kind of gave me the unofficial, because again he was retired at that point, but he kind of still had an idea what was going on. He said, "Dude, there's no way that Coachella is going to happen in September or whatever it happened to be." And by the way, this was in March.
Yeah.
They had just canceled it. So I said, "Oh my gosh, maybe I need to start thinking a little bit longer term."
Yeah.
So here we are a year later, and we seem happy that we're going to have a minimal amount of audience participation at a baseball game.
Yeah.
That's improvement. So I guess it is just resilience of us as a country. But at the same point, whether it's panic buying or supply chains, to me, that's not the human part, because we could talk for 2 hours about the healthcare system. My wife recently had surgery, and there was parts of that experience that were not first world experience. The surgery, once we got there, first class, and oh my God, Loma Linda, wonderful job, and thank you to all of her doctors. But some of the build up to that, I'm like, what country am I in, for gosh sakes?
No,
It was ridiculous.
It's stunning.
But on you mentioned the supply chain thing, and it's totally off point. I'm not even sure you discussed it in your presentation. How is the supply chain? You did mention there's all these shipping containers sitting off the port. What's in those things?
So here I remember before March last year, a colleague of mine sends out an email, says, several people, let's go for lunch, and let's talk about what is going on in China and so
Right.
forth. And to tell you the truth, I was a bit forewarned because I have several Chinese students.
Right.
And I remember one of them who was in Nanjing. She had gone home after Christmas, and she sent me an email and she said, Professor Keil, she was my student, she said, you have to buy N94 masks. I said, what is N94? N95.
95, right.
I said, what is N95, right? And so I look on Amazon, and here they are. Cheap, like, I don't know, $20.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'll just do it for the fun of it, right? You tried that 2 months later,
Right.
and you couldn't. Okay, so at the time, we're sitting in a restaurant at lunch discussing what will be the impact of what's happening in China. And everyone was just saying, oh, supply chains.
Right.
Supply chains, maybe Apple will have problems with the processors.
Chip or something,
yeah,
right.
And that's it. No one, I was the only one who said, you have no idea what's coming in terms of, it's a demand side problem, right? Which in the end is what it was.
Right.
I think what it means with the container ships sitting out there is we are geared for a recovery now that we haven't seen before. And what is the problem is already that they have problems unloading the ships.
Right.
And that will continue because we're just going to suck in much more. I think here's something else that will be really of interest, which is with all the talk about automation and robotics and industrial revolution, I actually think that some of the jobs that we lost in the past to Asia and so forth, that those will come back because why? Our costs for labor are still very high, right? But because of automation,
Right.
the unit labor costs will go down significantly, except for it doesn't necessarily create jobs. It results in capital labor substitution, right? But I think output will come back much more into the US. We're also very weary of the idea that so much of our medicine is produced in China and
Right.
so forth, right?
It's funny
So-
because as you were saying that, I was thinking that, and that was one of several things that we kind of learned, I suppose. It's like, oh, I don't know, a super high percentage, 90
Yeah.
plus percentage
Yeah.
of the ingredients or whatever it
Yeah.
happened to be. And I kind of thought, oh, well, that seems a little troubling.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. So what does that mean? What is
No,
it,
so-
should that be
so-
troubling, or are we gonna bring that back over to the United States? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is the output part is going to come back. So we're going to produce actually more in the United States than what we had lost before in terms
Right.
of production. Why? Because we can afford it now because of automation, right? Here's the problem. It doesn't mean that the jobs are coming back,
Right.
right? And in my view, that for example was one of the biggest lessons that economists had to learn, was that when we say everyone gains, well, the country gains from trade with others, that's true, but not everyone in the country gains. As we saw with the huge amount of dissatisfied workers in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, right? And those were all the states that the Democrats lost because there were people who were left behind, right? And I think that's the problem here, that output is going to come back, but what is going to happen with jobs? And I think one of the reasons why the stimulus package is as big as it is, I think this government will try to say, whatever we didn't do in 2008, 2009, and that's why it took 7 years for the economy to recover in terms of employment, this time we won't do it. We will just push money into it, and then hopefully people will believe more in government programs and so forth and so
Right.
forth.
Interesting. And it's kind of unrelated, but I was thinking about it when you first started making the comment, and I just completed an interview with Bruce Norris, and he kind of brought this up. He's building some houses, and he had indicated that the cost of lumber and some of the materials not only are more expensive, but they're harder to get. I've been asking the question for a year now, and I still don't have the answer as to why is the demand for residential real estate so high on the buy side, of course. And then I guess all I have to do is look at myself and a couple of other, frankly, of our speakers bought houses during 2020. But the flip side of that, or getting back to the supply chain, well, my wife and I bought a house. Well, we wanted a new stove and a new dishwasher and all that sort of stuff. I got to tell you, man, stuff that we took for granted. Hey, let's go to Best Buy or even go online at Lowe's and let's order, a Samsung or Maytag. It doesn't matter what it was. You forget it. And this was June, July. You could not get appliances. But I think we're over that hump, and it is what it is. Okay, so you mentioned a couple things. The GDP number, which we kind of did a little pre-game thing here in between your presentation and this, 7.4%. To be honest with you, I probably would have said, okay, 7.4%, let's just let the audience kind of figure out what that means and digest that on their own. But again, I just did an interview with Bruce Norris, who absolutely fell out of his chair because Douglas Duncan, who is the chief economist for Fannie Mae and has been for years and sits on a variety of different boards, apparently their team is projecting an annual number in the low sixes. And Bruce just was like, oh my God, this is a huge number. I'm not sure I believe it. What does it mean? So, should we believe? By the way, did I get it right? 7.4.
Right, yeah.
And should we believe? Well, I guess we should. You're saying it. So, what does it mean?
So the reason why we went higher than even the Fed, although the Fed is now at 6 point something in their latest forecast, is because we just think that there's a huge amount of pent-up demand.
Right.
The amount of savings that households have, because they didn't spend it, is just sitting there, and they do want to spend. It just hasn't happened, right? And I think once they feel safe to go again to restaurants and so forth, they will do it. Right. I can see it in my home city. Before the most recent lockdown, you had problems getting places in the restaurant, even though they just had outdoor dinings.
Right.
Now, of course, that was because capacity was less, right?
Right.
But I do think that people are willing to spend and they're ready to go, and it shows you sort of also with the unease that some people have about the lockdowns, and you see the same thing in Europe, protests, right? Is because it's too restrictive. You wanted to do things and you can't do it, right? And I think that will happen again, and that's why our forecast is higher than some of the others.
And I don't know that we want to go too deep into this, but you did have a slide, I think, which was comparing California to Italy and Germany, and maybe another European country.
France.
France, and I think it was Italy that's back, or UK, it's back under some lockdowns and so on and so forth. And again, I was going to say let's not get political. There's nothing about what I'm saying that's political, even though it seems like everything today is political. But I don't know that our country will do a lockdown again. I don't know. I think, and I'm sure if I'm the folks at the CDC and all those folks that are I absolutely believe they are 100% genuine and concerned, and they want to do everything they possibly can to keep people as safe and healthy as possible. They must be concerned that if we did get a third wave, that people are just like, yeah, thanks, but I've got a vaccine now, or whatever it happens to be. So I guess maybe that's a wild card for everybody's forecast. I mean, before you answer that, you said at the very end, I think I'm quoting, but the last 2 minutes of your presentation, the outlook is as positive as it can be. So are there any qualifiers to that? Or is that one of them?
And as I said, just like you, I seem to rule out this possibility of a third wave here. Why? Well, Italy has had a lot of problems with the distribution of the vaccine. For a variety of reasons, they couldn't get as much vaccines out as they wanted to. France is trickier and Germany is trickier, but they haven't seen the increase that Italy has. And I think what your and my optimism is about is that, as I said, we already are at 21% of people between 16 and 64 who already have at least received one shot. Right. I've received 2 shots, right? And so I think once you get to that comfort level where, again, you can consider, as the CDC now recommends, if 2 people who both have had the shots, they should be able to sit indoors without face masks and communicate with each other, right? And I think that's right. And I think that is also what is needed for people to be willing to go out and so forth. I mean, what was our fear before? Our fear before was, people don't want to be in crowds, right? I mean, public transport will suffer from that. More people are driving, right? And we've seen that in China as well. So there is still that problem of perhaps not wanting to be in crowds. But as you know, Disneyland is going to open, right? In April. Now, only with outdoor rides. But again, everything will build up slowly this quarter, and then the big boom will come in the second quarter and the third quarter.
Right. Okay. So assuming we don't have any additional concerns, which we do, but let's just suppose that doesn't come to fruition. What else might be of a concern? But before you answer that, let me segue into this. Okay, Adam, our trusty, what do we call you, Adam? From afar, what do we call you?
Economist in training.
Economist in training. He's in charge of all of the stuff that we've got going on here. He's done a wonderful job. Probably not the best place to thank Adam and Chuck and everybody, but I'm tired, and we've been doing this a long time. But Adam is concerned about a few things. But interestingly enough, the word inflation has really not come up a whole heck of a lot in our discussions. And again, we're totally out of order, guys. This interview is going to air early in the forecast. But I'll use Dr. Thornburg, for example, real quick. I think again, my interpretation of his presentation is he wasn't overly concerned about it, if at all. If it is, I guess it's down the road. And then he made some comment, which maybe you'll agree with or not. It's very hard as an economist to I guess, predict inflation. So are you worried about that? Because it doesn't sound like it's as positive as it can be. It sounds like anybody who's worried about inflation.
So let me give you an analogy. And the analogy is something that actually happened to me.
Okay.
The analogy is you go whitewater rafting,
Okay.
which I did on the Kern River. We drive up, there are signs on the side of the road that say, since January, so and so many people have died here. It's okay. You say this is okay because we've rented a boat with a guide in it. There will be 6 people in it and we'll be safe, right? And so this involves overnight stays. And by the way, the guide telling us, do not drink the water because up the Kern River, the deer
Are doing their thing.
Yeah.
Got it.
So make sure not to drink the water and so forth, right? And so we go down the Kern River, and we've gone through a few what are called level 3, level 4 rapids. There
Okay.
was one level 5, which we took the boat out of the Kern River and walked around, and because you don't want to go down the level 5. And in this case, we're in the level 4, and we're all paddling away. And there is a rock at the entry into the rapid.
Okay.
And the guide, for some reason, there was another boat stuck, and he hits with the front. He hits that boat in the rock. I'm sitting in the back, and I go in
In the water.
at the top of the level 4.
Okay.
Right?
Nice. In the water.
Into the water
Okay.
and down by myself.
Right.
Where you see. You don't see the sky as much as you are underwater. Occasionally you come up and you go,
Okay.
And and of course I thought I would die because maybe I get stuck under some rock and God knows what.
Right.
And we come out at the bottom of the rapid, and the boat, of course, with the other passengers.
They're fine.
They're fine.
Right.
And my wife sits in the boat, and she says, Manfred, your hat, your little fluffy hat to avoid a sunburn is floating down there, right?
Right.
And I said, F word, the hat.
Right. Yeah.
And that was it, right?
Okay.
And that's how I look at inflation at the moment.
Okay.
There is something maybe down the road, but we just went through a level 4 rapid.
Okay.
We have never seen this amount of employment loss, this amount of output loss. I mean, we're sitting there, we're just saying, you're scared.
Right.
At this point, you are just out of the plane,
Right.
falling, and the parachute hasn't opened, right? And you are so concerned, and you finally make it to the bottom, and somebody says, well, there's maybe inflation
Right.
down there.
So
And
basically,
you said,
inflation, basically.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
we edit that part out.
Yeah.
So,
we'll think about it in a year's time.
Right.
But at the moment, let me tell you, we're live.
Right.
We should be holding hands, right?
Right,
And
right.
and so worry about inflation, and that may be there down the road, but at the moment, let the hat go.
Okay.
Just let the hat go.
So again, not fair because we didn't talk about this, and if I put you on the spot, then so be it. So my interpretation of a lot of the people that have kind of come on, and even some outside people, I mean, obviously we're all looking to people that we think are experts. It appears as though 2021, I always use the term, I don't know who I stole it from, is just puppy dogs and rainbows. I mean, it's wow, just a wonderful year. I'm hearing from people that I don't normally hear, kind of like the second year projection, that are kind of indicating that 2022 very well may also be a lot of puppy dogs and rainbows. Pretty good news. Or do you feel the same way?
Yeah, so our forecast was still 5.5% growth. If you remember,
In 2022?
2022.
Okay.
So if you look at the U.S. average until 2007, the number to remember was 3% growth.
Right.
U.S. economy grows at a rate of 3%.
Right.
After what I refer to as a man session, because in that recession, the jobs lost were in construction and manufacturing.
Okay.
So 2 industries dominated by males,
Right.
right? So after the man session, that went down to 2.5%. We never got back to 3%. Trump, in 1 year, had 3%. Otherwise, it was 2.5.
Right. Well, I can remember that.
Yeah.
I can remember him saying
Yeah.
he'd get at least 3 or even higher, and
Exactly.
the general consensus was
Yeah.
you're out of your mind, you're never
Yeah.
going to make it. And then when
Yeah.
he did, it was a parade,
Yeah.
a Trump parade, so to speak.
Yeah,
But
and so we were so happy at that point, even to have 2.5 and so forth. So 5.5 is huge.
Right.
And again, I mean, the only way that we sort of can justify that when we construct these models that forecast this is this pent-up demand
Right.
of households that will be there for more than, let's say, the 3/4 that are there for the rest of the year.
I'm not an economist. I don't know how to read the charts and graphs, certainly in the way you do, although I look at them and I think I make an understanding, and most of them I probably misinterpret. Again, I'm going to quote Bruce Norris. I just interviewed Bruce. He's not an economist. If you call him that, he gets upset. But I've never seen anybody who looks at more charts and graphs and tries to analyze than anything else. Now, one of the reasons I think he was struggling with this high GDP number was he was saying something to the effect that, okay, the consumer demand we're pent up. We've literally been pent up. We want to get out. Maybe we want to spend some money. He says, but we can't get our hair cut. We missed 9 months of haircuts.
Yeah.
We missed 9 months of dining out. Or 10, 11 months, whatever it happened. We missed insert whatever it happens to be. So he's like, it doesn't mean we're just automatically going to go get 2 haircuts tomorrow.
Or 2 meals in a restaurant.
Well, and again, my joke with him is, of course I can get 2 meals, and,
Yeah.
and it looks
Yeah.
like you might be
Yeah.
able to grab
Yeah.
one with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, okay, but so my retort to that was, let's just suppose you're me, and I like to go on 1 cruise a year, and I go to 2 shows a year, and I do, go out to eat twice a month. I could see me going on 2 cruises this year, assuming I have the income and all the rest of that. And I could see myself truly doubling those type of things.
Yeah.
Go to 5 baseball games instead of 2 baseball games. So is that? I mean, am I oversimplifying this?
No.
Or?
I mean, we've thought about this. Exactly that argument. You're not going to have 2 meals when you had 1 before. But you have to think about, right now, we're coming from a point where there was 0. Think of Coachella, since you like the Coachella Valley.
Yep.
What about the snowbirds that they had? Well, the snowbirds are the Canadians,
Yep.
right? Typically. I mean, there's some others. And by the way, it's only the West Coast Canadians, because the East Coast Canadians go down to Florida.
Right.
Okay. So you've got direct flights from Alberta. You've got direct flights from Vancouver, right? And all these snowbirds were missing this year, because now,
Right.
if you want to fly back into Canada, they put you into the
quarantine thing.
Right?
Yep.
And the same thing in California, we are missing 150 direct flights a week. Now it's between San Francisco and Los Angeles, out of China. 150 direct flights, not
week,
one
right.
stop, right? So to begin with, all of that will come back, and then people have saved extra amounts. So what are they going to do? I don't know. I always wanted to go to Costa Rica. I've been to Japan, and I definitely will do that. Will I do the second trip to Japan now? Probably. Maybe I wouldn't have done it, just like you.
Right.
Maybe you will go to a restaurant that is more expensive than it was
Right.
before.
Or maybe treat ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe go somewhere. Honestly, maybe go somewhere that you wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
Just because maybe we now don't take for granted that we can go next year, or we can
Right.
go 5 years from now. It's like, well, man, I better do, how's that saying go? You guys know what I'm saying, but just let's do it.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting. Okay, so basically, screw inflation. You're not concerned about it. The GDP numbers look ridiculous. Certainly, I mean, you couldn't. I mean, you literally, your words. You can't have a more positive forecast than you've got. So, all right. Well, maybe that's our mic drop moment again. Is we just say, it's been a year. We're not in the theater. I mean, we're here in a dark studio and all the rest of that. So maybe we'll be in the theater next year.
Hopefully.
Anyway, well, thank you. Let's do the COVID bump for
It's
now.
good.
How's that? And thank you so much. And something tells me we're going to be doing, a 3rd anniversary of Manfred next year. So, all right, guys, more forecasts to follow, and stay tuned.